presentation is what is actually happening to some of the things that are actually happening to the food that we are getting today. So let's pray. Father in heaven, we want to thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to come together. We thank you for, Lord, that the Holy Spirit has agreed to join us where two or more are gathered together in your name. I pray, Lord, that you would teach me as I present and make everything clear and understandable to those who are listening so that they can make a choice, dear Father, as to how to treat their bodies based on the things that you are teaching us and what we have available to us. You have opened many doors, dear Father. Help us to walk through them with you so that we can be healthy. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay.
If it bother you, no, it won't bother me at all. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I can't turn it up. BJ will have to turn it up. Hello? Testing, 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 testing. Can you hear? Testing? Okay. Okay. All right, 10 reasons to grow and preserve your own food. And this is part of a presentation, but not the entire presentation, because we want to directly deal with the food itself, whether or not it's available, what's been added to it, taken from it, and choices that we have to have a better diet. So the number one reason is the loss of U-Pick farms. And how many of us actually go out to U-Picks and take advantage of what they have to offer? Yeah. Oh, yeah. They are a wonderful option for getting things or bringing things into your diet that you can't grow yourself. So if you have a smaller patch or, if you're not experienced in certain things, U-Picks are a very good option. We've been picking at U-Picks a long, long time because we've lived in different states. When we lived in Wisconsin, U-Pick was the number one way most people in the area we lived in got food because we didn't grow a whole lot. We didn't have big lots. You owned a home with maybe a half acre, and most of that was, in the city realm. So you didn't grow a lot of food, but there were a lot of farms around us, little family farms that grew beans and corn, and you could go there for 25 cents a pound and pick just about anything. But that was back in the 70s. So you can pick anything, and then when you got home, you would preserve that. So now, last year, we were going to Michigan to pick Concord grapes because we make our own grape juice and jelly and such. And I go online to this site, upick.org, and pull down a document that has all the U-Pick farms in that area. And from that, I start calling them. So what varieties are available? What is the price for those varieties? And, how much are they a pound? Well, in that area, typically they run right around $1 a pound. And there's like 19 different varieties that you can get. And usually there's 30 or 40 farms in one county that you can go to. Well, last year that wasn't true. Out of that document I pulled down, there were probably 50 farms on there. And out of the 50, at least a third of them had completely shut their doors.
Did you say 50 or 15?
50 farms were there, and a third of them had shut their doors. Because Michigan grows, that's an abundant place to go. You can get peaches and nectarines, raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, grapes, all kinds of things you can get there that where I live at in Tennessee, they're not available. So we started going to Michigan when we lived in Wisconsin. So we just continue to go there because we know what they have. We have a relationship with the farmers, and we can get really good quality food, and we have what we want for the winter. So this time I pulled up the list, and some of the reasons for closure are listed here, like Maxwell's Farm is a popular strawberry farm. This one's in Maine. And after 51 years, they're closing their doors. That's a very long time for a family to own a farm to have to shut the doors. They had a fruit fly infestation that forces them to cancel their strawberry picking season. And then the third owner had financial pressure. The economy declined, consumers declined, for the demand declined. Different reasons all came together to make it more difficult for them to farm, and so they had to shut the doors. Big Apple Farm, after 28 years, they closed their farm and the owners retired. In Wetzel's Farm in Pennsylvania, they grew apples, peaches, strawberries, cherries, blueberries, and nectarines for over 70 years, and they closed last year. You think about the people who actually depended on them for fresh food. Now, where do they go when these things shut down? And as things are getting worse in our society, and sometimes you go to the grocery store and the produce doesn't look so good, you want to have another option. So that's one of the reasons why. Doran's Farm, and there's so many others. I chose farms out of different states because Michigan, like I said, a third of those had closed, and I was wondering if it was happening in other places as well, and it is. So these are the ones from Michigan: the Pete's U Pick, the Sweet Summer Gardens, and Tremendous Fruit, all closed between 2019 and 2021. So the second reason is decreasing number of independent farmers and farm acreage. In Tennessee this year, 2025, there was an article in the paper that talked about over 1.9 million acres of land has been lost to farming. And it talks about, I think it was 1.5 million acres of farmland has been lost to development. And that at the bottom it says the land where a house sits is more valuable than ever, meaning the return on investment for a head of cattle to graze versus selling the land for a house is a stark chasm. In Williamson County, and that's the county that Nashville is in, available land for just 12 acres of property ranges from $800,000 to $1.2 million for 12 acres. According to a real estate listing posted in March, the listings aren't advertising further farm usage. The listings feature how many homes could sit on that 12 acres. So it's we're losing that valuable land. That look at in the book of Exodus, when the children of Israel came out of Egypt and God divided them on the promised land, he gave them land. He said, don't give it away. Don't sell it. He said, not unless you have to. And if you do, in the year of Jubilee, it's going to be returned back to you, because God found great value in families having land. It gave us independence. It gives us food. It gives us recreation. Land is such a valuable asset. And as far as we're concerned today, it's really more valuable for its food ability than it is for housing, even though the world thinks differently. So in this article, it says new agriculture census data released by the USA Today is a cause for concern, as the number of farms operating in the US and the number of farm acres have both fallen significantly. In 2022 Census of Agriculture reports that 141,733 fewer farms in 2022 than in 2017. The number of farm acres fell to 848,000, a loss of more than 20 million acres in just 5 years. So increased regulations, rising supply costs, lack of available labor, weather disasters, all have squeezed the farmers to the point that many of them find it impossible to remain economically sustainable. Family farms not only help drive the economy, they allow the rest of the nation the freedom to pursue their dreams without worrying about whether there'll be enough food for their pantries. So almost 1.3 million farmers are now at or below retirement age, while just 300,000 farmers are under the age of 35. So you see people on YouTube and they're homesteading small acreage, but they're not producing food for the public. They're producing food, most of them, for their own families. And unless we go back to doing that ourselves, we may find that the shelves are short one day of fresh food, and that it won't be available to us. Environmental toxins is number 3. How many of you know about the California lithium battery fire? That was, I think, in April? No, January. That fire happened in January, the beginning of the year. A lithium battery company in California exploded, and it released cadmium and arsenic and all kinds of chemicals into the air. But nearby this factory, what is the lettuce capital of the United States? They call it the green capital of the United States, where the majority of the lettuce, spinach, and those green leafy vegetables are grown and shipped to the grocery stores in the United States. So the FDA went out and did some testing in this salad bowl area and found that the particles were settling in those fields where the lettuce and stuff was grown. So when they tested, they found all these chemicals in it, and they did not destroy the crops. So the heavy metals, that the nickel, the manganese, the cobalt, all were detected by the labs, but the crops were never destroyed. So you leave it to your imagination what happened to them. So that salad bowl in the Salinas Valley was only 12 miles from the incident that occurred. So genetically modified foods is the number 4 reason. They give advantage. This is from a government website that gives advantages and disadvantage of eating or growing genetically modified food. So they say that they're less prone to pests and insects. And then that's the advantage. The disadvantage is that they contain DNA of other plants, so they may cause an allergic reaction to people. And that would be nice to know, but a lot of these crops contain genetic DNA from things that are not plants. So, and they're not things that we normally eat. So because of that, you know, you don't really know what genetic material was crossed with a specific item that you have, say it's a tomato that you are purchasing. You don't get the choice to say, I don't mind having that in my body, or I would rather not eat that. Even if it's another plant material, it may be something that you don't desire to eat. So we deserve to have the choice as to what we put into our bodies. Genetically modified crops use low labor, less irrigation, and fewer pesticides. And that's not necessarily true either, because some GMO crops are Roundup ready. So that's not less pesticides. That's not less dangerous pesticides. Corn is a GMO crop, and it's Roundup ready. So when you think about that, we need to know the whole truth of the matter so that we can make good decisions. They say one of the disadvantages of this is that these crops have lower nutritional value, since genetic engineering overlooks nutritional value when focusing on other needs. But how many of us have been told that GMO crops don't contain very much nutrition? Most of us have never been told that. The crops are rich in nutrients. Now, see, look at the two different things. One says the disadvantage is that they have low nutritional value, and the advantage says they're rich in nutrients. So aren't they kind of contradictory? So it says these crops are resistant to antibiotics due to their genetic modification process. The problem is antibiotics are sprayed on a lot of crops today. And more likely than not, they're resistant because bacteria build up resistance when you're constantly spraying the same antibiotic on the same crop. So genetically modified crops produce increased yields, which help feed a larger number of the population. The disadvantage to that says these crops have increased toxin production at levels that are already harmful to humans. So that's not a choice that I want to make, to eat genetically modified food. So to know the difference, look at the label on the food item. A four-digit code starting with a 3 or 4 is a conventionally grown product. So it'll have pesticides and herbicides sprayed on it, but it's not necessarily genetically modified. A 5-digit code starting with a 9 is an organic product. And a 5-digit code that starts with an 8 is a genetically modified product. So if we're looking at the label on our fresh fruits and vegetables, we can get an idea and make that choice as to whether or not we really want to buy that product. So chemicals, additives, colorants, and flavorings are number 5. So I'm not going to go through every single fact on these. If you want to take pictures, I don't mind if you take a picture, but these are the chemical dirty dozen, and you can find this online. If you type in chemical additive dirty dozen, they will all come up. And one is potassium bromate. It's a possible human carcinogen, and it's added to flour and baked goods. Number 2 is propylparaben, and it's a preservative used in pastries and tortillas, and it causes reproductive harm. 3 is BHA, and it's used in cereals and meats, and most cold cereals and potato chips have this item added to them. But it's a known human, identified human carcinogen, and it disrupts the hormones in humans and causes reproductive problems. BHT is akin to BHA and has some of the same problems. It's a chemical disruptor of the system, and it is a known human carcinogen. Titanium dioxide is a color additive that's added to candy. We don't really eat a lot of candy, most of us, but if your children like these brightly colored candies, this is one of the additives, and it may damage their DNA to have a high concentration of this in their bloodstream. Number 6 is the 7 different synthetic food dyes that are found in many foods and vegetables, and they can affect development, cause behavioral difficulties in our children, and they are red number 3, red number 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, blue 1, blue 2, and green 3. Some of these, our new administration has said that they are now banned, but most of them are still on the market. It'll be a while before they're taken off. So red 40 causes hyperactivity and various types of cancer. Red 3, thyroid cancer and chromosomal damage. Yellow 5, hyperactivity, chromosomal damage, and thyroid ulcers. Yellow 6, hyperactivity, kidney and adrenal gland tumors. Green 3, bladder and testes tumors. Blue 1, hyperactivity, chromosomal damage, kidney tumors, and asthma. And blue 2, hyperactivity, chromosomal damage, brain and bladder tumors. And, we wonder why our children can't sit still, and they say and do things that are odd for children to do. But some of that has to do with what they're eating. So number 7 is aspartame, and that's an old one. Most of us know that it's used instead of sugar. It used to be really touted by the American Diabetic Association for diabetics to replace their sugar. And now there are other better alternatives than that, but it can affect your hormones that regulate metabolism, and it has a negative effect on weight. And that's one of the reasons it was touted in the first place, was to help diabetics lose weight, but it has been found to do the opposite. So it has been linked to heart disease, increased risk of cancer, and is found in baby food, in snacks, drinks, frozen foods, and many, many other items. ADA is number 8, and don't ask me to pronounce that one, but it's used as a dough conditioner and strengthener when you're making bread. So it is also a bleaching agent in breads and pastries, and it's linked to an increased risk of cancer. It can cause liver and kidney injury and affect the blood and the nervous and the respiratory systems. A lot of times, I never really thought about reading labels for most of my life. I never thought, I don't know, I guess I was just naive. I never really thought about manufacturers not caring about whether or not these foods had an effect on my body. So if I wanted wheat bread, I'd just buy wheat bread. If I wanted sugar, I'd just buy sugar. And now I'm learning that it all makes a difference. We need to read. If you want to hide something from somebody, put it in a book because they'll probably never find it there. And that's a sad thing to say because our lives are at stake, our quality of life and our longevity are all at stake. And it's based on food, partially on food. We can destroy or we can improve our health with just our diet. So number 9, propyl gallate is a preservative used in vegetable oil, meat products, and chewing gum. And it may cause hormone disruption and has been linked to an increased risk of asthma, hyperactivity, and even cancer. Number 10, sodium benzoate is a preservative used mostly in carbonated drinks, fruit juice, salad dressings, and fermented foods. And some of this stuff, I don't really understand exactly why it's necessary because you can preserve things adequately with lemon juice. There's easier ways to do it. So why do we need all of these chemicals? Unless it's a financial reason that it's cheaper to use the chemicals than it is to squeeze fresh lemons. So, and I don't have any proof for that, but I'm just wondering why we can't just use natural things with natural things. When combined with ascorbic acid, citric acid, and vitamin C, sodium benzoate has been linked to an increased risk of cancer. So in sodas, salad dressings, and fruit juice, you're going to find vitamin C because they add lemon juice to those things. And so if those two things are combined in the product, then your risk of cancer is higher. The reaction between sodium benzoate and any of these three, vitamin C, ascorbic acid, or citric acid, forms benzene, a chemical associated with blood cancer. Number 11, BVO, brominated vegetable oil, is used to stabilize citrus flavors in sodas and fruity drinks, and it can cause neurological and reproductive harm and thyroid toxicity. Sodium nitrate is an additive used to preserve deli meats, hot dogs, and sausages. And when added to processed foods, nitrates are associated with an increased risk for cancer. What nitrates also do, they will kill your kidneys. So we have to be so, so, so careful with our selections of food.
Is it still a law that all those things are supposed to be listed in the ingredients when you get them?
It's right now, that's still the law, that all of these are listed on the ingredient labels. So, but what they changed is the way they're listed. They can change the name, they can use abbreviations, it can be the titles can be where if it's a 2-word title, instead of saying sodium bromate, it can say bromate of sodium. It's the way they list it that tricks you to believe it's not the same product when actually it is. So we have to really start researching. If we see something, my motto is the same as most of the world's. If you can't read it, pronounce it. If there's more than 4 items listed on the label, you might want to think twice about buying it. A lot of times I take my phone in the store and I read a label and I don't know what it is. So I look it up and I'm like, oh no, man, maybe I don't want that one. And you start searching for something else. And what usually ends up happening is I find that a lot of things, I just can't buy them and I have to learn how to make them at home. So you either give it up completely or you learn how to make something to substitute for it. So irradiation is number 6. And that's the process of exposing your food products to, and their packaging, to ionizing radiation from gamma, X-ray, or electron beams without direct contact to the food product. Now that's not true. And I'll tell you how I know. If you've ever purchased peaches or another one that does that, nectarines or plums, and you put them on your counter and they never rot. Have you ever had that happen? You go back 2 weeks later and they look just like they did when you bought them, except for a few wrinkles on the outside. They were irradiated. Irradiation changes the chemical compounds of the cellular makeup of the food. It keeps it from spoiling, and it kills the bacteria or the insects that were on the outside of it, but it also sterilizes the seeds. So that food product sitting on your counter is meant to last a long time, but that doesn't tell you the age of it. It could have been there 2 weeks on your counter, and it could have been on the shelf of the store for 2 weeks. So you have a month-old peach there that never rotted, and you're going to eat that. The first time I saw that, I had some peaches in the back of my refrigerator that I had purchased. I forgot they were there. And a month later, I went to clean out my refrigerator and they looked just like they did when I bought them, and they went into the trash. I didn't even put them in the compost because I was afraid. I said, what is this? And that's when I started reading about irradiation. It was approved by the FDA in 1985. And the reason was during that time, there were a lot of salmonella outbreaks, and they wanted to make an end to this salmonella products because a lot of products were being recalled. So they came up with this way of irradiating the food. Well, if you know what's happening today, salmonella is alive and well in spite of irradiation. And the other thing that they were using it for is when they ship products in from other countries. Mangoes is a good example. They come with usually bacteria on them that is not native to the United States, or live insects or insect eggs, and they don't want them to populate here, so they irradiate them and kill them. But that sterilizes the seed in the plant. So if you ever wanted to take that seed out and you wanted to plant that crop, it would not grow. If it did grow, it would grow with a damaged cellular makeup, so you don't know what the fruit would be like. So this is the irradiation symbol, which I think is kind of deceiving because to me, it looks like something organic, It's nice and green. And if I saw that, I would think, oh, there's an organic product, but that's actually an irradiated product. One way to get around irradiated food is to look for the label on the boxes of fresh fruits and vegetables, especially shipped from other country, that says hot water processed. Mangoes will say that. When you buy them, buy the box like at Costco, right on the side of the box, it'll say hot water processed. Or if it was irradiated, it will say irradiated. And this sticker will be on the mango itself. So if it's not in the box, look for a sticker on the fruit that either has this symbol or says hot water processed, or if it says nothing at all, it means it's been treated, but not with irradiation. Irradiated products have to have that symbol on them.
Is that what hot water means, irradiation?
No, hot water processed means that when the fruit came in from whatever country it came from, they dipped it in vats of scalding hot water and pulled it out to kill the pests that might have been potentially on that product. Because the fruit comes in a more green stage than ripe. So they either spray it with hot water or they dip it in hot water, depending on the type of fruit that it is.
So that's not harmful.
That's not harmful. That actually kills the bugs without using chemicals and without using irradiation. So you want to look for that on your products rather than the irradiated symbol, right? So this just says that it's used to delay sprouting and ripening, and that delay of sprouting and ripening is used on potatoes. It's used to treat potatoes specifically to keep them from sprouting. But then when you go to plant those potatoes, they will grow, but you won't get any potatoes. They won't produce anything. Organic foods are irradiated as well. They are. There is no food product that's exempt from irradiation.
About the countries.
No, food products in the United States are irradiated as well as from other countries. Other countries are specifically going to get it unless the person who's purchasing them requests not to irradiate them. Like we go to a farmer's market in Georgia. Most people probably know about the DeKalb Farmers Market in Georgia. They specifically will not buy irradiated mangoes. So when you go there, on the side of the box, it'll say hot water treated. And so I know I can go there and get mangoes. But I went to Kroger for a class that we were giving in Centerville, Georgia, and I did not read the sticker on the mangoes. We got to the class, we were making mango preserves, and all of them were irradiated. So we could not make preserves that night because when we were getting ready to cut the mangoes, one of the students pulled off the sticker and said, "Is this the irradiated symbol?" And we were like, "Oh my goodness, yes, it is." So you can get them in our local grocery stores, and those mangoes came from Florida. Yeah, they came from Florida. So it depends on what warehouse they go through. Florida is a place where they do a lot of irradiation because a lot of food comes from other countries. So everything just kind of passes through and is irradiated, whether it's local or not. That's not true everywhere, but for the bigger ports, like New York and California and Florida, you're more likely to find produce that came from those areas that have been treated with irradiation. Yes,
So they always marked,
that's the law. That's the law. So if they're not doing it, we will never know. But that is the law, that they be labeled that they have been irradiated. So sterilized foods or irradiated foods are used in hospitals for patients with severely impaired immune systems, such as those who have AIDS or are undergoing chemotherapy. And that's because it's not just used for them. That means that they're getting it as well as everybody else. The staff is getting it because they don't check labels to see if the food is irradiated. If they want greens, they order greens. You know, if they want bananas, they order bananas. So whatever comes through there is what is served to whomever is there. So number 7, yes, sure. That means it's been irradiated. And sometimes there's 3 of these symbols because since I did this PowerPoint, they've come up with 2 more symbols that are representative of irradiation, and they don't, none of them look alike. Well, I shouldn't say that. They're similar, but some of them have other colors on them now other than just solid green. So just read the sticker because, oh, okay, I'll talk louder. Information that you do want to know. And then that one slide I'll go back to. If you don't already take this and keep it in your phone so that you know what the code, you look at them on the sticker, you'll know if you're buying conventional, organic, or genetically modified or vegetables.
Hold on for a second. I got to go. That's me. I'm sorry. I was testing this. Testing 1, 2, test. We'll put you right there, though.
Where we were, irradiation. So yes, if you got a picture of that, we'll move on to the next one, which is unwanted alternative proteins. Now, I was speaking with someone earlier and they were talking about we need a higher protein diet. But when you read the Spirit of Prophecy, she says the opposite, that we should not have excessive protein in our diet. Well, our scientists and food manufacturers are saying we need more protein. So one of the ways they want us to get it is a cheetah powder, and a cheetah powder is ground crickets. So what they're saying is that crickets they emit 100 times fewer greenhouse gases than cattle. And raising a pound of crickets requires 1 gallon of water and 2 pounds of feed, while raising a pound of beef requires 2,000 gallons of water and 25 pounds of feed. Well, honestly, and I don't eat meat, I'd rather eat the cow than the cricket. But this is one of the things that they are now saying. They said because the population is growing at a speed that is unmanageable, and cattle can't be raised enough cattle, we don't have enough land to raise enough cattle to feed all these people, that we should start thinking of eating insects to get the protein in our diet. I don't agree with that, but hey, this is what they say, this is what they're going to do. And now it's added to protein powders and to those protein bars and shakes, and that's what it's in now. But who knows where they're going to go with that? Yes. That's the name that they've given it, is a cheetah powder. And this is something that started in 2022. So who knows what's going to be added next, but it's going to be interesting to see where the world goes. I read an article in Sweden. Some of the scientists were talking about the inability of the planet to feed all of the people. And they said that we need to start thinking about eating corpses, because we're also running out of places to bury people. Corpses, dead people. Yeah. You know, it gets worse. I'm sorry, but it's going to get worse as we go along. Number 8, chemical preservatives. Appeal. Most of us have heard of Appeal. Okay. You know, it's tasteless, it's odorless, it's invisible, and it's a coating that slows down spoilage. You see it a lot on avocados, but it claims to be environmentally friendly and plant-based. It's extracted from food waste like seeds, peels, pulps, and stems from plants. And its stated ingredients are grape skins and seeds left over from wine processing. But if you go down to the bottom, during the extraction process, Appeal is exposed to industrial petrochemical solvents and heavy metals. Now this company, Appeal, reported and the tested amounts of these solvents and heavy metal in their submission statement to the FDA, page 14. And I looked it up, and they actually did report their finding. And this last paragraph I copied from their finding. Appeal contains lead, cadmium, arsenic, palladium, and mercury. But it claims that it's in small enough doses so it doesn't make a difference. So the government gave them a seal, generally recognized as safe to eat. But everybody knows that these metals accumulate in the human body, and they accumulate in fat tissue. So the heavier we are, the more likely that we're going to store this stuff in our bodies. And then what's going to be the result of that? Over time, somebody's going to be sick. So would you agree that now is the time for answers? And the answers are going to come from prayer, from the spirit of prophecy, and from research. We're going to have to start researching and reading for ourselves. Number 9, biosynthetic engineering. How many have been following what science is doing with biosynthetic engineering? I've been horrified. The Lord woke me up one night, and I was looking for things that are happening with our food for a different presentation, because that's all we were specifically talking about. And I ran across an author. He's a scientist, and he works with children in middle school to encourage them to want to become scientists. But he's a synthetic engineering scientist. And what you're going to hear now, I took directly from his book. So CRISPR is the technology that was used during COVID to create the COVID vaccine. So it has 3 main features to that technology. CRISPR-associated genes such as the Cas9 to code for proteins that cut DNA. They guide RNA that is programmable to target certain genes or gene sequencing so that those genes can be edited. And then when they edit them, they hope that the end product will become whatever they have designated that it should be. DNA molecules are added to the system to implant a desired gene into the host cell. One of the things they want to do with DNA is instead of using hard drives and what do you call them, flash drives to store data, they now want to store data on human DNA cells because the human DNA can code for millions and millions of things, whereas these little hard drives and stuff have a limit. So researchers have been frustrated with the results of using CRISPR on embryos because what the government allows them to do is when a woman aborts a baby, they can give that baby to science or somehow or another it's signed over to science and they can test a lot of this CRISPR technology on those embryos for 12 days. When the embryo reaches the 12 or 14-day limit, they must destroy the baby. Well, science doesn't like that idea anymore. So what they're doing is they are using CRISPR, creating their own embryos that can survive through past the 14 days because now they're not considered human by society. Although science knows that genetically that's human material that they are using. So when they attempt to target individual genes for blindness, they delete the entire chromosome using CRISPR. So that's why they want to now create their own babies so that when they're deleting these chromosomes and stuff, nobody cares. It wasn't in some woman's womb, it didn't have a mother and a father. So now nobody cares, so they can do what they want. So there are concerns about CRISPR's potential darker side. In theory, it could be used to redefine what it means to be human. There are many ethical implications of exploring synthetic alterations to humans that don't directly address disease and suffering. Because in the beginning, when CRISPR was initiated, it was because of COVID, disease and suffering. Now they've gone well beyond that. So human embryos for genetic diseases caused by mutations, SynBio believes that human embryos are the logical choice or destination for their experiments. Human embryos or even newly fertilized cells called zygotes could be engineered to rid the cell of a single base change or mutation. So they want to go into the mother and implant their biosynthetic DNA cell into her and delete the gene for HIV or delete the gene for autism or whatever the disease is they're working on at the time. They're figuring that they can do this. But because of the 14-day rule, scientists are moving away from human embryos. They want now to produce their own artificial early stage synthetic human embryos using a pluripotent stem cell. So they're a baby's stem cells or a person's stem cells that they're going to use to make their own babies. 90% of the synthetic embryos are viable after the 14 days, meaning 90% of these babies they're testing are living long beyond the 14-day. In November of 2018, a Chinese scientist, now you can look this up online, it hit every major newspaper in the country here. He Yangqi claimed that he genetically modified embryos to make them HIV resistant and that 2 twin baby girls were born, Lulu and Nana. Lulu and Nana lived beyond the 14 days and actually he birthed them. I don't know how he did that, but he birthed these babies and they were truly HIV negative. Their parent cells were HIV positive, but they ended up HIV negative. He got so happy that he published a paper and was immediately prosecuted and jailed and lost his license. And he was sentenced to 3 years and had a $427,000 fine for unethical behavior, but all he did was expose what they were doing. And he was punished for exposing what science was already doing. It's going to get worse. I was up nights. And I got off of Wikipedia. I'm citing where I got them from because PubMed published this as well. So if you go to the scientific journals, you can find so many different things that they're doing that we never thought could be done or would be done in our lifetimes. Do you realize that what these people are doing now in science, in Noah's day, that amalgamation caused the destruction of the world? That was one of the sins that caused God to destroy the world.
Brother Tom, just
Yeah.
that has to be, you know, when they really faced the image of God out of the way, and they were doing something that was going to be.
That's right, because then they become God, you know, and only God can bring life.
That's like
So-
another book talk about this. That's what
See,
has to do with saying.
this is what science is doing. SynBio has a role in agriculture. They want to increase our food production so that they can feed all of these people that are projected to be on the earth in the next 50 years. So, they're saying that they can increase it by 70%. And to meet the demand for meat when the population increases an estimated 25%, but they are creating meat in the lab, and we already know they're doing that, but they're also going to create meat substitutes. So more than 40% of the Earth's land surface has already been converted for agricultural production. And we know that actually that's what's in production now, but we're losing that. So because they know we're losing that, they're coming up with alternative ways of feeding us. So microbes in the soil of a crop are the plant's microbiome. Some of these microbes can naturally fix nitrogen. So this company, Penn Bio, has decided to sequence the genes for fixing nitrogen in the soil, in the bug, and over hyper those genes so that they're always fixing nitrogen. Well, we know the soil has to have a balance. So what happens when these things get out of control? Because even Gates has said that they have released a monster that they can't get back with SynBio. They don't know where it's going to end up. So if they can't control this gene, so what happens to our soil? Because if it goes out of balance, how do you balance something that is not natural? It didn't come from nature. What do you balance that with? So do you have to create something else to fix that?
If you don't have it on in your garden, is it gonna?
None of those questions are answered in the articles that I read. I don't know if these things can fly off, to another state and cause havoc there. There's just a lot of things that don't have an answer. So cultured meat was first introduced in China in 2013, but they got rid of that because the burgers didn't taste good. So in 2022, Upside Food received an FDA approval to market cell-grown chicken. And so the only way they can market it is in restaurants. It's not in the grocery stores, but if you go out to restaurants to eat chicken, that's one of the options for chicken that they can buy. It never had a mother or a father. It grew up in a lab. So no, they do not have to sell that.
Just think of chicken.
If you go on YouTube too, you'll see people who have gone out to eat and they bring this stuff home and the next day it looks really strange and they put it on there and say, well, what is this? And everybody's guessing and giving answers as to what that thing was. But if they actually went back and read as to how chickens are being treated today and how they are being grown in cells, in a lab, then you kind of realize that what we're eating may not really be real meat. It's something akin to it, but it's not the meat that we knew and grew up with, or that God intended for us to eat. So it says here that in June 21, 2023, the USDA gave approval for Upside Food to offer their lab-grown chicken to restaurants. And as of 2025, it's not yet sold in grocery stores. Good Meats, which already sells cultivated chicken in Singapore, the first country who allowed it, turns masses of chicken cells into cutlets, nuggets, shredded meat, and sautés. Cell cultured meats could be produced from any animal on the planet, perhaps creating a new product for luxury meat market. And they've been talking about doing that with zebras and kangaroos, offering it as a delicacy. So building meat libraries Collecting cells from species like water buffalo and kangaroos could be cultured and tested to make food for human beings. So lab-inspired meat alternatives, we all know the Impossible Burger and Beyond Burger. They are part of the SynBio program. So they were not meant or created for vegans or for people who were vegetarians. They were created for meat eaters so that they could slow down the production of cattle, of maintaining cattle. So they want to try to get people off of the meat products with something that looks, smells, and tastes very close to meat. This product is what gives us its taste is heme. There's a heme nodule on the roots of soybean plants. It's also on fava beans, and there's one more bean that same heme nodules on the roots. So what they do is they culture those, they harvest those nodules and they put them in a computer and they analyze what makes that thing taste like urine and blood, because that's what the flavor of meat is. And they found what it was and they synthesized that for its DNA, and that's how they produced Beyond Burger and the Impossible Burger. The reason they genetically engineered it was because even though it's a bean product, they can't grow enough of those beans to harvest enough roots to make enough burgers to feed the people who have a demand for it. That stopped long after the Impossible Burger was introduced. They realized then they had to find a better way of getting that heme, so it became a genetically engineered product. And that Impossible is genetically engineered, and Beyond is by SynBio. So they're two different processes, but they both Beyond has a DNA component that's placed in it. This one has a DNA component that has been reconstructed to build a different product. I mean, give taste to a product and texture and odor and all, all of that. So they say that the Impossible Burger generates 87% less greenhouse gases and requires 95% less land and uses 75% less water than the burgers made from cows. But the end result to us is what we have to be concerned about. Because if you think about it, if we're eating crickets and we're having genetic cell-grown chicken, and then we have these burgers that, are DNA modified, and then our vegetables are chemically destroyed by, irradiation, and, you put all this stuff together and you wonder, there's no wonder we're sick. So here is a list of some of the bioengineered foods, and this I prepared last year. And I only took out a few of the list, the total list, but there are a lot more than that. And you can go on www.ams.usa.gov, and they have a complete list there of the foods that they are working on in bioengineering. Yes. It gets worse. Yeah. They can be listed as organic. As a matter of fact, you're going to see not only can they be listed as organic, but they're listed as natural. And yes,
Comment between vaccine, that Impossible Burger and APO, all funded by Bill Gates.
yes, they're all projects of Bill Gates. Mm-hmm. Right. And you're going to find out why in just a few minutes, why those things have something have Bill Gates in common. So the next product is this non-browning agent it's a gene that they have manipulated to keep avocados from browning. And on that label, it says GMO free, toxin free, and they advocate for clean foods, but it's a genetically modified CRISPR product that is sprayed on these avocados to keep them from browning. And it's supposed to be for your good, but it's actually for shelf stability. So the next one, is it vegan or is it natural? As SynBio weaves into our lives, we will increasingly have to look for it. Foods and cosmetics are being affected, and they will call themselves vegan or natural. So many businesses are adopting this practice to align themselves with sustainable practices. And part of this came out of the fact YouTube had a part to play in this, because people have gathered together as communities and said, hey, we don't want this anymore. And we're going to share how we're homesteading. We're going to share where we're getting our produce from. We're going to share all of this information that the government is doing that we found out because my cousin was sick and my mom died. And, we're sharing for the benefit of one another. But manufacturing is looking at that and said, hey, we got to head this off. So here's how we're going to do it. For those who are not paying attention, for those who are not reading labels, for those who are not sharing, we're going to make products that say vegan and natural, but they all came from a lab. And so the people who are going to consume these products will love the taste, they'll love the packaging, they'll love the convenience of it, but is it healthy? Is it something that you would really want your children to eat? That is the question we each have to ask ourselves as we research what's going on, as we hear the different changes that are happening to our food. We have to decide, how are we going to feed our families, So Neanderthal distinction is the latest thing that they're doing. In 2013, it started. George Church described how de-extinction of the Neanderthals might be technically possible using recently discovered and sequenced Neanderthal DNA. So via SynBio, scientists can now synthesize prospective gene sequences from mammoth DNA and test them in living cells from the expression of mammoth genes. And how they're doing that is they're injecting these DNA cells into Asian elephants. And so from that, they want to bring back the woolly mammoth. So woolly mammoth DNA from the Museum of Science and Industry into the Asian elephant, and then we bring back these things. Because, I just think they have too much time on their hands. They need a job, because why in the world would you want to do that? But, we can't explain why this is happening except that the Bible said it was going to. He says, as it was in the days of Noah. And that's exactly where we are right now. With CRISPR, scientists can grow cells and organs in the lab using mammoth genes and test for function. To revive mammoths or something similar, scientists propose to engineer mammoth genetic material into Asian elephant genomes. In 2021, scientists produced a monkey-human chimera by injecting human stem cells into the monkey's embryo. So we're fast causing God to have to say, we can't go, I can't, you can't go any further with this. Yeah. Jesus is soon to come. He has to come because we will destroy one another if he doesn't. The sell-off of natural product companies is number 10. Now, you were talking about the things they have in common with the COVID vaccine and all the things that are connected to Bill Gates. All these natural companies, Burt's Bees sold out to Clorox, Seventh Generation sold out to Unilever, Tom's of Maine sold out to Colgate Palmate. We're losing our natural companies that made products to help us be healthy, and they're now sold under the same names. They are still called Burt's Bees, but they're actually a Clorox product now. Yes.
It's actually companies that make all the products.
Did you know that these are the only companies? Yeah, that's right. They own everything. And we're told in the spirit of prophecy that a few men will own everything at the end of time. So we're at that time. We're seeing Bible prophecy come to life, even on our plates. So now it is time. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go back. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Okay. So are you still asking yourself, why should I garden? Why should I grow my own food? Why should I put away my own food? Why should I read labels? What is in it for me? I hope not. We all want peace of mind, and we can use our common sense and the word of God, and we can have that. So food preservation is not merely about putting food in a jar or in a bag or a container. The true principle behind preserving food of any kind is that we have a work to do to help those in need during the final stages of the great conflict between Christ and Satan. There are warnings after warning in the Bible repeating the fact that we are not only facing what has happened before, but what will happen again, with greater intensity and immensely more traumatic results than ever before. Matthew 24 tells us that. It describes the destruction of Jerusalem as well as the end of the world. So, and we're in those stages right now. The Word of God calls it an overwhelming surprise, a time of trouble such as never was. Over and over, we are admonished that now is the day of salvation and that we must get ready, get ready, get ready. This preparation is a test of our faith in and loyalty to our Savior. Disobedience here is as weighty for us as it was for Israel at the time of the destruction of Jerusalem. God gave them specific instructions. He says, when you see the abomination of desolation, that was the flag of the Romans stuck in the ground in their land. He said, get up and go. Leave the city. Those Christians that left the city survived. Those that stayed in disobedience to God had food stored, but they were at animosity to one another. So they fought. They threw food over the wall at Titus, and to the point where they had none left, and they ended up eating their children. And the book of Lamentations tells us that. So we don't want to be in the situation that they were because we weren't listening. We didn't want to read. We didn't want to change because I've been this way all my life and this is the way my grandparents ate. Well, what we have going on now and what your grandparents had going on are two different things. A lot of the things that we deal with now, they never had to deal with. Even with meat and or food products and things that they grew, the soil was in better condition. There were less pesticides. There were less pests. And as far as meat was concerned, most families grew their own. I know we did. The milkman brought milk, but my mom and dad would buy a cow. They would hire the neighbor to house it because we didn't have enough land for that, but they paid for the feed. When slaughter time came, that thing was hauled off, slaughtered, and brought back in packages. And that's how we didn't have in that little town a grocery store the way we know it now. So if you went to the store, you could get a bag of flour and stuff, but you weren't going to buy half a beef. You weren't going to buy steaks in that little store. So what we're dealing with now is a lot different than the way food was raised way back then, where they used to cure meat for weeks to make sure that it was safe, where they used to take care of their chickens. They had a run for the chickens, and the chickens ate scraps from the table. Few manufacturers are doing anything like that anymore. So the food that we have now is inferior to what we once had. And because we're mindful of that, then we also have to we have to make the hard choices, to give up some of these things. They taste good, but why? There's added blood to that. There's added salt to that. There's added sugar. There's too much oil. All of these things are palatable, but they're not healthy. So it's time to let go. The earth is to be made to give forth its strength, but without the blessing of God, it could do nothing. In the beginning, God looked upon all that he had made and pronounced it very good. The curse was brought upon the earth in consequence of sin. But shall this curse be multiplied by increasing sin? Ignorance is doing its baleful work. Slothful servants are increasing the evil by their lazy habits. Many are unwilling to earn their bread by the sweat of their brow, and they refuse to till the soil. But the earth has blessings hidden in her depths for those who have courage and will and perseverance to gather her treasures. Fathers and mothers who possess a piece of land and a comfortable homes are as kings and queens. Let us teach the people to eat freely of fresh grapes, apples, peaches, pears, berries, and all other kinds of fruits that can be obtained. Let these be prepared for winter by canning, using glass as far as possible instead of tin. So we're going to stop there because this is a very long presentation. We'll go here. Is it in vain? My brethren and sisters, are you among those who having eyes see not and having ears hear not? Is it in vain that God has given you a knowledge of his will? Is it in vain that he has sent you warning after warning of the nearness of the time of the end? Do you believe the declarations of his word concerning what is coming upon this world? Do you believe that God's judgments are hanging over the inhabitants of earth? How then can you sit at ease, careless and indifferent? We can't. If we care about our lives and our health and we want to live to be one of the 144,000, one of those who stand for God at the end of time, we have got to do something about our health. We've got to take control of it. So I thank you for hearing our presentation.